So, welcome to this last panel of the day, co-production amongst players in Europe. Please take a seat, my wonderful panel. From the EBU, I thought I'd kick off with a bit of self-promotion. The EBU co-production development window is now open, so if you're interested in taking part, have a chat with me afterwards, or if you're lucky enough to know Matthew Trustram, who's our head of TV, then have a chat with him. Co-production, of course, open for the 2023 slate. Now, someone gave me 45 minutes to play with, which is very foolish, so I thought I'd start off with a story, as it's the last panel of the day, and I thought I'd indulge myself. This is about co-production, and when we talk about co-productions, an awful lot on panels in terms of business models and funding and sort of more efficient production of content. But that's not everything, and that's certainly not what necessarily we're that interested in at the EBU. So a story. In Spain, two villages in the Alpujarras region of Granada, in the foothills of Sierra Nevada, sit on a stone bridge as water trickles through a ditch under their feet. The ditch was built by their ancestors 1,300 years ago, and having dredged it by hand, the two villagers are now explaining to RTVE camera crew how it turned out to be an ingenious way to combat the desertification of the region brought about by climate change. And at the same time, in Sweden, a herd of moose cross a river at the exact same spot their ancestors have done for thousands and thousands of years. The only difference this year is that hidden in the foliage, a motion-sensitive camera placed by SVT detects their arrival and silently begins recording at the ancient site. And at 7 a.m. on the Azores archipelago, the sport club Lusitania's young international stars from Brazil, Peru, and Colombia meet from early training run. This time, they're joined by RTP's production director, Bruno, who impressively manages to keep up with them for a while, even carrying heavy film equipment. And finally, in Vienna, Austria, a young clarinetist practices the virtuistic passage work of Carl Maria von Weber's Clarinetto Concerto No. 2 for several hours every day in preparation for a performance in Montpellier, which will be broadcast across Europe, in fact, taking place today. So why am I talking about this? All these things are viewed by millions across Europe, and they're made possible generally by one person from one company, in this case members of the EBU, but any company, having a bright idea that is then brought to fruition only by a collaboration through multiple companies. So, like I started with, co-production is a form of financing, it's a business model, it's a way of doing business, but it's more than that. It's something that actually enriches the stories that we can tell as part of our industry. And to tell this story, I'm joined by a fantastic team of industry vets. So on my left, I have Robert Frank, the Vice President of Drama at ZDF Studios. I have Nebojša Taraba, producer and partner of Drugi Plan. I have Raela Stefanovic, editor-in-chief of HTV, of course, the Croatian broadcaster, and member of the EBU. And Christina Gallo, Director, International Television Production, CEE for Sony Pictures Television International Studios. And finally, I have Monica Klewenska, who's the Content Acquisitions Director of Canal+. Fantastic. Before I kick off with the questions, I think it would be lovely to frame who we are and therefore what opinions we're giving. So if my lovely panelists, starting on my left, could give us a brief introduction of who they are and what they do.
Sure. First and foremost, thanks for being here. It's almost 6 and it's hot outside, and you've been listening to a lot of really good speakers before us, so we'll have big footsteps which we have to fill in. We'll try to do our best. My name is Robert. I'm heading the drama department of ZDF Studios. We are a distributor at heart. We belong to the biggest German service broadcaster. ZDF, and we're one of the biggest co-producers in Europe. And at heart, we are a distribution company, which means that we sell, and in order to sell, we need to produce and co-produce content. And I guess that's what brought me to this panel to give my 2 cents to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Nebo Shatarova. I'm producer, local Croatian, with a Croatian series on Netflix, HBO, Europe, HBO Max, recently co-producing with ZDF Arte, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm speaking from this end of, you know, the front line, and so that's me.
Perfect.
Hello, thank you. My name is Rahela Stefanovic. I'm editor-in-chief for 5 TV channels on Croatian radio television. I'm also always on the hunt for good content, so whether on productions or co-productions or acquisitions, we are always searching for good content for all of our channels. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cristina Gallo. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I work for Sony Pictures Television International Studios, which is the group of Sony that's responsible for all non-US productions through its 20 companies in 15 countries around the world. The Crown or Sex Education, Leonardo are examples of the production that this group has been responsible for. And I look after production in Central and Eastern Europe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Monika Kłosińska. I work for Kanal Plus Polska. And as Kanal Plus Polska, we are playing on 2 fields. So we are a broadcaster of 18 channels, 12 pay TV premium channels, and 6 basic pay TV channels. But we are also a pay TV operator. So as I heard, this hasn't been possible in Croatia before. Now with the change of the media law, it becomes possible. In Poland, this has been possible. And so we play on both fields.
Perfect, thank you. Now we've been properly introduced, we can start. So I thought I'd start off with this slightly fluffy question that leads on a little bit from my story. I've posited that, of course, co-production is something that allows you to explore something new and exciting. But is that true? What do you guys think? You're the content people. I'm just the outside observer. So do co-productions allow you to tell stories? What kind of stories can you do with a co-production that isn't? Can you go to new places? Can you meet new people? What are the advantages in terms of storytelling?
Well, I will take a word here. I mean, it's, you know, everybody is speaking about co-productions lately, which is, but I can say that it's, I mean, it's, when we speak about independent production, it's quite new. So, for example, in Croatia, we didn't have that experience so far until our last series, The Silence. And let's say the dominant model is the European art house cinema co-production, which is, how to say that, very technical stuff, you know, so very often, you know, working through some reciprocity principle, through the, you know, cooperating national film funds, you know, so this year we are general producer, next year we are minor co-producer, etc., etc. The producer, especially if it's minor co-producer, is really there just to transfer the money to close the budget, very rarely involved in the content itself. Of course, there is financial co-production in TV production as well, but that's more often among big broadcasters, you know, on the sides, and it's really different. Again, especially from the perspective of independent producer, Dana explained that great in her beautiful presentation about, you know, the key steps and key principles of setting up co-production. It's really, it's very challenging process. It's especially due to the fact that every broadcaster usually has a very clear picture about commissioning themselves, you know, so you have to fit into that. So it's good when you can have partners through the development process. It helps later. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying still to understand what we did. I mean, it's really, I can really speak about, you know, my own experience and what we did in this case, you know. So we were losing partners on that path, you know, the new one were coming. It's a bit, you know, it's really challenging. You know? So on the other side, what I really, and we in our company believe that the co-production of the TV series is a very organic thing in Europe, you know, and especially if you are coming from the countries like Croatia, where, you know, we hear different, I can say, foreign voices all the time, you know. So we are a touristic country, you know, so we are the crossroads, you know, the place when different worlds touching each other, you know. So it's like, for us, it's really normal, you know. So finally, we are not dubbing TV market, we are subtitling, you know. So, you know, having the series, when you hear people speaking 2 or 3 different languages, it's not a problem for us at all, you know. So these are all kind of, let's say, certain parameters of that. And finally, of course, it's a financial moment, because what we consider high-end budget here for the TV episode of the TV series is on the level of 250,000 euros. And it's incomparably less than, you know, than Austria, Germany, not even to mention Britain or France, you know. So, I mean, so if we want to deliver high-end, you know, we have to find money elsewhere, and yeah, so this would be kind of that.
Perfect. I'm seeing some nodding on the panel, especially when it comes towards the budgets there. Is there an opinion someone wants to chime in with?
I can only echo what Nebojša was saying, really, that, you know, as we all know, the drop in consumption of US content and the growth in consumption of local content, with the streamers, here we've been talking about the streamers coming, the streamers are coming, the streamers are here, the prices are getting inflated of productions, and this is kind of a way for local broadcasters to stay in the game for premium content, to enter into co-productions. So I see it as a helpful way forward.
So if it's purely a financial, well, not purely, I'm being facetious. If it's a financial pressure here, why CoPro? Why not use other methods of funding? Why not lean on distribution or debt-funded production? Is it to do with risk? Is it to do with efficient use of cash flow? Why do you choose CoPro rather than, you know, retaining rights and following a different model? What is it that makes it appealing?
I think that why you invest in production, you have much more to say than if you just buy content. So that's one of the reasons why you decide to go. First of all, you're involved at a much earlier stage. So depending obviously on the co-production share, your share of voice can be smaller or greater, but you can even influence the script, sometimes influence the characters that take part in a production. So I think this is the major difference. So first of all, securing access to content on an early stage, but also having more to say than just buying content.
Yeah. The EBU has the whole initiative about drama regarding the co-productions, and they are doing really challenging. They are in a way of challenging times regarding the drama. But we all live in a media abundance era, so we are aware of the screen time of our audience, and drama series, especially screen time on fiction. So we have to, as a public broadcaster, listen to our audience, and we also have to produce. Regarding the financial, we don't have that much money as they are used to, as the audience is used to with watching all these series. So the co-pros are, of course, a logical way of dealing with this. So, of course, we have to open much as we can to this kind of production.
There's another aspect, and that's just the very sad economic reality of our market. We're right now in a market which is totally saturated by content. There are all these new streaming players coming in, and their only way to kind of like differentiate their services from other services in the market is not the brand, because there is no brand loyalty. Like, people just don't give a fuck about Netflix or Amazon. They just want to watch content, and that is why they have a problem of churn. People go away. The only reason why they produce is because they have to, because that's what makes their services sticky. And you asked early, like, why do people choose the co-production model? It is because there are not a lot of alternatives, simply. And we see that all the time. It's not that producers can go on the market and say, hey, I have like this great set of different financing models which I can pick from, and everything is perfect. The reality is, and you as a producer, you will probably be able to confirm that, is that you just have like 1 or 2 shots actually to get something funded, and more often than not, just finding something which really resonates in different markets is hard enough. But then there is a reality that actually the partners might not be even interested in what you're offering. And it's not that you can go to a bank and just like say, hey, give me 5 million euros, I want to produce something. You won't get a loan. And then for you guys on the channel side, on the commissioning side, it's just like, does that work for my channel actually? It's very interesting to be here because, like, we as a company, we're co-producing since 30 years now, and it has always been part of our DNA. And I'm quite kind of thrilled to see that it's picking up here in this region as well, because I think it is just like the next logical step to develop your economies and like trying to identify these opportunities. And at the same time, it is incredibly challenging. And I think Dana did a really good job earlier to put together like all these obstacles which you have to overcome in order to just get there. And you have to align all these things in order to get a co-production done. I think there is a really big problem in the market, which is like the media is portraying it as easy. But it's not easy. It's hard. It's incredibly hard, and I can only see that, especially in a developing region like this, it's even harder because, as you said, like the budgets are smaller. It's harder to get these things together.
Yeah, we had, for example, a very strong interest from one big Western European national broadcaster who wants to co-produce with us, but they set up the limit of the minimum budget, which is for us like, how we will get there, So it's, again, I really don't want to sound too romantic, but sometimes, sometimes the story you are making take you naturally to the then you reach for all possibilities which are coming out from the story. Then we can see, and especially I can say, that is in Croatia, and that is probably elsewhere in European Union, the public services are the main generator of high-end drama production, and except in Poland, I think that it's applicable for entire Central and Eastern Europe, where big streamers are coming and investing directly to originals from our regions. It's sometimes pick up, sometimes nothing, so we will probably have to wait along. So we are relying to the public services, and it is kind of in the DNA of those institutions, to cooperate. At the end, it's Eurovision, EBU, whatever. But it somehow, What we also experienced that right now we can see interest coming from the big developed Western markets to support, even to join the stories which not usually have the kind of national element from the co-producing country, which is very, different, for example, when we are talking about funding of European art house cinema, So then it's always kind of demand that there is a certain national element in the story. Now, obviously it's not must anymore, so it helps in a way, so.
You mentioned a key word there, friction points. You're right, Dana was talking about it earlier, and I was taking notes. Friction points. It's true that it's very easy for someone like me to sit on a panel and tell nice stories, but until the contracts are signed, or even further, then nothing's actually been made. What for you, because we're from different parts of the industry, so perhaps it's quite a good chance to talk about this. What are the friction points for co-productions? What are we dealing with? What are the nightmare scenarios? What would be, if you could wish parts of it away, what would you choose to erase from the process of the co-production? No,
Perhaps you are more experienced than that.
I wouldn't say that these are blocking points, but I think what Dana mentioned previously, it's very interesting and important to set, while doing a co-production, the set of rights each of the co-production partner wants to take. And this is extremely challenging, but this very often defines the partners with whom we can go into a certain co-production or not. And this can be different on the territory basis. So for instance, if we do co-produce with a partner that has operations in Poland, then it's more about the windowing, so which window which partner takes. And then sometimes it's about the territories, so then it's easier, but then it's more about the production itself, because it needs to adapt to be adapted to different markets. All right, so I would say these are the things that you take into account if you have a story that you want to produce and you think about co-production. So, and what Hans from M7 company, that is part of Canal Plus Group, mentioned, we, for instance, did an international co-production with M7, which was originally planned for Poland, so the Single Planet, and 3 out of the episodes were actually filmed, out of 8 episodes were actually filmed outside Poland. So 1 in Prague with a main Czech actor, 1 in Vienna, and 1 in Amsterdam.
Yeah, battle for rights. I can see that's the main topic that everyone is talking about. So I suppose everyone in each document that I read said you should have a really good negotiation skills in these kind of things, especially when the giants are coming as VOD platforms, and we should have a really good point of view on stuff like this. Of course, for us as a public service media, I agree totally with Nebojša with saying that we are really important and key player in creative business in Croatia, and that we should contribute to the creative industry in Croatia. So this is why co-production and productions and good relationship with these creative businesses are very important for us.
In speaking of the friction points and nightmare scenarios, of course, it's when you are very advanced and then the co-production partner give up, and that's really, and it's happened, and it's happening all the time. And then another very frustrating thing is, this initial financing. It's always expected to come from the home country, like you know, and then, you know, you are trying to get that promising co-production contributions, and then you ask them for at least LOI, and they say, okay, we will give LOI, but show us the money, etc., etc. So you can spend the years, you know, spinning around in this, you know, process, and you are still not sitting at the table with the scripts and going through the lines and taking notes and, you know, making what will at the end be the episode or series in complete. So yeah, it's a long process, but as I said, now after this experience, I think it's worth, I mean, in a way, it's good to be co-producer. It's really a good thing, I can say.
It's an interesting. Oh yes, sorry.
I just wanted to say from a production point of view, sorry, there are ways to avoid nightmares, I think, and one important thing is that to make sure that the partners working together have a similar idea about the production, similar culture. So it's important to pick the right partners, basically. It's the first step in avoiding nightmares. And just another thing that we also do is to over-communicate all throughout the process. Just communication, so you don't get to a nightmare situation in production of you know, having to deal with like a last-minute emergency of you have to do this, but we don't want to. But so.
That's a perfect segue to my next question, which is around communication. We've got a range of different companies. I know I've mentioned that before, so I think everyone remembers. When the co-production's taken place, no single production company, broadcaster, commissioner, whatever, there's no standard way of doing business, but there are preferred ways of sort of interacting around this. So in terms of, you know, control of the script, control of the decisions, the budgets, being a silent partner or a very noisy partner, perhaps, different for a production company to a sort of commissioning partner. Where do you sit on that? Do you prefer to be in control, or do you push for the creatives to do their own thing and sit back?
I think that we should always be the noisy one. Of course, it depends on the budgeting and what our part is. But I think that we should all be doing very creative communication and making situation without the nightmare situation. Communication is definitely the key. But of course, we as a commissioner and editors later in front of our public service media should very hard monitor all the production and co-productions. This is what I think regarding to this.
I think where the money is coming from, the noise should come from. It's that simple. Yeah. And usually, a big chunk of the money is coming from either the platform or the channel. So at the end of the day, we have to realize that as producers and even as financing producers or distributors, we are not B2C. We are B2B. So we are actually working for gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper tells us what they need, so we need to listen to them and they need to have a say, because otherwise we're going to produce something which will not stick with the audience and ultimately will not be successful. So it dictates kind of like who should have the loudest voice in the room. If you go to the independent movie industry, it will be different, because like movie producers work like if it's being directly released to theaters, like for an audience. We don't as TV producers. And then I think from my perspective as a distribution company / financing producer, because ultimately that's what we are helping to navigate producers through that very complex market environment, because also reality is that usually local producers, they just can't know all of Europe. They can't foster all this relationship with the biggest broadcasters or platforms in each territory, know what they're looking for. So it's good to have somebody who's kind of like shepherding them through that process and help them to educate them along the way and tell like, okay, so you're dealing with, for example, ZDF or with NRK or with Movistar, and they're looking for this and that, and then kind of like make sure that everybody's prepared so that we don't steal your guys' time, because you get like so many projects every week, and I think my experience is like the projects which are being made are the ones which are best prepared, not necessarily in a creative way, but just in the way how the setup is being prepared and how the financing models are being prepared and all that. And that, again, like dictates where the money should come from.
Yeah.
I totally sure, and I believe exactly where the money comes from, there is the biggest noise. And for ourselves, it also depends what is our co-production share. And depending on this, we are less or more noisy. If we are the majority co-producer, obviously we want to have the final say, and it's very important to set the rules up front, as Dana said before, in terms of different views from different co-production partner. If a compromise cannot be found, who has the final say? So once this is set, and if we are the major co-producer, we try to have this last word. But also, of course, we invest also in co-productions where we have just a small co-production share. First of all, movies, like you mentioned, in terms of we have produced and co-produced over 200 movies in Poland. And on the movie part, we are usually a minority co-producer. And there we don't have a say. I mean, we pick up movies that we are interested in, but then in terms, we don't really enter into details or have. I mean, we are on collaborations, obviously, but the final say is with the producer.
Yeah, and it's you are first, of course, you are looking again from the perspective of independent producer. You are looking for another production companies on the first place when you are setting it up, and then that company is your kind of delegate producer on a certain market, communicate with the broadcasters, with the buyers. Sometimes it could happen that, for example, you pick up a partner whose assumptions about their market was completely wrong. Then you end up nowhere. I really need to say, as Frank said, that it's good, and lately it's more and more happening. That the big and strong distributors are joining the projects quite early now, helping them. So they are more and more, let's say, one-stop shops for independent producers who offer all kind of things related to the financing of the project before once it will be distributed worldwide. So that's the position of distributors in our, let's say, ecosystem is more and more important, and it's growing, and it's very helpful regarding the protection of rights and what it's left to us at the end, especially if you are having big streamers, global streamers on the other side. So it's yeah.
Let's talk for a moment. We've managed 35 minutes, and we haven't talked about Netflix. Not really. So I'm going to break that, but not in too direct a way, I don't think. I'm going to start with. Obviously, the impact of the streamers has changed the way we do business in the production industry. Could you, because we do have such variety here, surmise perhaps the biggest changes that are resulted from the impact of the streamers for the way that you guys do business in the co-pro space?
It's a democratization of play out. At the end of the day. So like we used to be in a push market where we as gatekeepers decide what viewers would watch, and now that fundamentally changed, and it's a pull market where the viewer decide what they watch. And it's not necessarily Netflix. I mean, like, have you looked at their stock price recently?
Tanked, yeah.
So it is because there are so many streaming platforms out there, and there's so much content, and the reality is that actually, a lot of people don't really watch it. It is something which ends up on these services, and the vast majority will not be successful internationally. That's the reality we're seeing as a distributor. So I think we have to come from a point of quality. So you have to really think about like what is the core idea and what makes that series worth producing, and not just try to look at it from an economic model, but just like think about like, is it really strong enough to survive in that market which is so driven by competition?
I think that, I mean, and now I'm really speaking as a person, not even as a producer. The Netflix used to be kind of proof of quality, I would say, especially on the beginning. And then very soon they turned to, you can see what they used to be. It was the video rental store. And you can, the same philosophy you can see in the production of their original content. We can now see the trouble is big. They are even kind of giving up of this binge principle they actually, sold to the world. So now we have to wait 1st of July for the last 2 episodes of Stranger Things. So I have to manage my daughter until then, So. And it's on the other side, you have another example, and I always, when I'm sometimes with the students, I'm comparing that, there was another big player, it's HBO, and you can spot the difference. And people forgot that their position slogan was, from the beginning, we are not TV, because they were really alone in that time. So they had to say that they are not TV because they offer something different. We are HBO. And you can see how well-curated content is there. So we can now spot the same, direction with the Apple TV, even Disney, of course, aside of the big library they have. But the decision. I can see decision that the streaming space will be held for really kind of high-end, whatever it is. I mean, we will never completely agree what is, it's at the end it's about the taste is. But yeah, that's where I think Netflix cut the branch they were sitting on, in a way. So let's see. I mean, for us it's interesting, and if it's like Beatles or Stones, I would say if it's Netflix or HBO, I would always say HBO. So that's
Okay. We have 2 minutes and 42 seconds left. I'd love to finish with my magic wand question, but I accidentally asked that in my excitement in the first half. So instead, I'm going to ask you to come with some wise words of advice. Don't worry too much. I haven't. You guys have all been, involved deeply in this over a while. If you could give wise words of advice to your past self, maybe 10 years ago, before this madness took off in Europe with streaming, if you could, send a letter back home to yourself 10 years ago, what would it be, Monica? I'll start with you. Yeah. Don't think too deeply. Just something that went wrong.
Invent binge watching before the Netflix.
It's not a bad.
For example,
not a bad
on our
shout.
HRTI platform.
Invest in streaming.
yeah,
I don't know to myself, but certainly an advice to the other players, like other studios, would be not to have sold their titles to Netflix back then.
That's a good shout. Yeah. No. Okay. Fine. Got 1 minute left.
Okay, I
Can't
have
ask
maybe
you
one
one.
more.
Go for it.
I would go to local telcos and actually local channels and would say, get your ass up. Do it now because you're losing against the Americans. And there was so much fear in the early days. I remember, like, I was running like one of the first VOD services in Germany, and like the management were just like, "Nah, we'll take off, meh, meh." And you know, it's the new technology. Of course, it will take off, and people didn't do it. So, like, trust in the future and don't try to preserve, because if you try to preserve, you're going under. You're going to die, because our market is driven by change. If you don't change, if you don't adapt, you will die in that market.
I agree with that. Someone about 10, 15 years ago said content is king, and that person should be taken outside and shot, because it was one of the most damaging pieces of advice I've ever heard. So on that violent end to this, unnecessarily violent end, I do apologize to this panel. We're out of time. Thank you so much to my panelists. Big round of applause.